The current betting odds leader to win the NBA Most Improved Player award is Cade Cunningham at the moment. Now, no offense to Cade, I'm a big fan of his. However, he is a former #1 overall pick in his third full season, fourth total. He did have one season he played 12 games and missed a majority of it with injury. So it's basically his third full season as a former #1 overall pick who was considered a, not generational, but a very talented, high-level prospect, blue chip, coming out of Oklahoma State. Cade is a fantastic player. However, he is not what I'd consider a Most Improved Player candidate. Because, to me, Most Improved Player would go to guys like, for instance, Aaron Brooks, Paul George, CJ McCollum, guys who weren't #1 overall picks, who often weren't even thought that highly of coming out of college, who burst onto the scene and had amazing, electric seasons. Real kind of underdog stories of guys that weren't projected to be all-stars that turned out to be all-stars. Well, not CJ and Aaron Brooks, but they ended up becoming very valuable role players when they weren't thought of that highly. So today I'd like to go through 5 players I believe aren't getting any buzz for Most Improved Player that I believe deserve some. I checked around on the sports books and I don't think any of these guys, except for maybe one, are being listed in Most Improved Player odds and voting. Again, no offense to Cade Cunningham, not his fault he's #1 Most Improved Player. I just don't believe that he is the right pick. I believe there's other guys that deserve it that are also on the sports book. These guys that I have are not. They're not going to be winners, obviously, but I just want to talk about some guys who have improved quite a bit since last season. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this video. Let's get right into it with the first player, 1 through 5. There is no order to this, it's just listing 5 players. The first player I have is Quentin Grimes. Between this season and last season, Quentin Grimes' points per game number has jumped a whole 5 per game. His rebounding has jumped 2, and his assists have jumped by more than 1 per game, while only averaging 4 more minutes per game. In my opinion, Grimes last year felt like a guy who might have fallen out of the league completely, if I'm being honest with you. After a rough last season, where his shooting splits were pretty disgusting, all things considered, 37 from the field, 34 from 3, 75 from the line, those weren't great splits, and I thought there was a chance that maybe he kind of falls out of the league if he couldn't pick it back up soon. However, he's on this list, so obviously this season has been quite a revitalization for Quentin Grimes. It started off in Dallas, where he had a very good showing in a bunch of games where Luka was out, Kyrie was out, and a bunch of their other big name players were out. He had a couple of big games and helped them win when, well, nobody else could. Luka was out, guys were out. Somebody had to step up, and it turned out to be Quentin Grimes. On the season, he's currently averaging 10.2 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists on 46, 40, 76 splits, and he was a huge contributor to that Dallas Mavericks team. Now, at the deadline, we all know Nico Harrison went fully insane and decided to basically overturn the roster overnight. One of those trades he did was trading Quentin Grimes away for Caleb Martin. Obviously, he traded Luka Doncic, but the Grimes deal was a pretty big one as well because they got back Caleb Martin, who has yet to play a game for them. So already kind of a losing trade in my opinion. However, I do think it makes some sense. Grimes is set to hit restricted free agency after this season, so maybe he just didn't want to foot the bill on a new Quentin Grimes contract. However, in my opinion, trading him for Caleb Martin just didn't need to happen. However, after the trade to Philadelphia, Grimes has played even better. At the time of writing, he was averaging 17.7 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists in 32 minutes a game on 52, 38, 65 splits, 65 from the free throw line. That's a little disgusting, Quentin. I'm going to be truthful, that game did not count in that Celtics game from last night. I didn't have that factored in when I wrote it the day before that. During his time in Philadelphia, Grimes has put up a 44-point game and a 30-point game. That 44-point game, he shot 2 of 8 from the free throw line. If he could have gone 8 of 8 from the line, he'd have had a 50-piece. Both games, he also shot over 65% from the field. Yeah, Grimes is going to have bad games. I'm not saying he's a star-level player. However, he has shown big strides for a guy who last season was basically on the chopping block of a Pistons team that was horrible. Grimes couldn't crack the 20-minute per game mark on a Detroit Pistons team that was one of the worst of the modern era. They lost 25 games in a row, and Quentin Grimes still couldn't get PT. Again, I'm not trying to be a dick and dig Quentin Grimes here. However, obviously, when you're not getting PT on a very bad team, it shows something. So, this offseason, well, last offseason now, it's clear he went to work, got better, and became just a flamethrower of a shooter. Quentin Grimes, in my opinion, went from a guy who may have fallen out of the league sooner or later to a guy that might be sticking around and getting another contract and maybe getting a bag this offseason from somebody, whether it's Philadelphia or another team. I think somebody will be willing to pay Quentin Grimes some money. Good for him. Salute. Salute. At number 2 on the list, I have Ty Jerome from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Everyone knows how good Ty Jerome has been this season. Not really a secret, he's one of the betting favorites and one of the favorites for 6th Man of the Year. However, in my opinion, I think he deserves a nod for Most Improved Player as well. There's not much Most Improved Player buzz around Ty Jerome, but Ty Jerome has definitely had a weird NBA career, to say the least, after an amazing collegiate career. Before this season, Ty Jerome had never cracked 48 games in a season. He damn near almost has never played half of a season before. Whether it was injuries or just lackluster play, Ty Jerome definitely struggled to stay on the court his first few years in the NBA. However, this season in Cleveland, it's obviously been a revitalization. He's on the list after all. 57 games, averaging 12 points, 3.5 assists, and 2.5 rebounds with 1.2 steals per game as well. If you want to compare seasons, you would have to go back 2 years because in my opinion, comparing Ty Jerome's last season to this one isn't fair. He played 2 games and averaged 2 points. Not much you can do with that, so we're going to throw it back to the season before last. In 2022-2023 with the Golden State Warriors, Ty Jerome played 45 games and averaged 7 points, 3 assists on 49, 39, 92 splits. Pretty good. However, he wasn't getting a ton of playing time. He only played 45 games after all. Ty Jerome's efficiency has been crazy this season. Somehow he's actually shooting better than a season where he shot 49, 39, 92. It's actually up from that. He's shooting 51, 44, 90 splits. 50, 40, 90 basically. I'm rounding up if I'm being honest. It's 89.7 from the line. I don't care. I'm giving him the 90. 50, 40, 90 is so aesthetically pleasing, especially for a guy who's shooting 44% from 3. You know what? Subtract a percentage from the 3-point and put it on the free throw. 44% is actually quite an insane clip for Ty Jerome, as in his rookie season, he shot 28% from 3, and in his third season, he shot 29% from 3. So it's clear he's taken some jumps in shooting this year. Between this season and his last full season, he's jumped over 5 points per game, as well as going over a steal per game, which is also a career high. The efficiency is insane, plus also a career high. He's putting up career highs in a lot of marks. Ty Jerome is an interesting player, but definitely is getting buzzed for 6th Man of the Year, deservedly so. However, I think that Most Improved Player should he should be in the conversation for that. He's been incredible this year when he was a guy who was not getting any buzz really going into the last however many seasons at this point. Shout out to Ty Jerome, and if you watch George Niang's podcast with him on it, you know that he's kind of hilarious too. The guys in training camp with the Cavs were basically saying this isn't going to last all season, and now Ty Jerome's made it last basically all season. Here's to hoping he has a good playoff run in him and can really help maybe get himself back into 6th Man of the Year talks. I don't know. Probably not going to happen with Peyton Pritchard dropping 40. However, once again, salute Ty Jerome. Salute. Number 3, I have Ochai Agbaji from the Toronto Raptors. Agbaji, coming out of Kansas, was considered kind of a safer prospect, if you don't remember. He was coming off a national championship and averaging, I think, 18 a game in college, and people saw him as a role player type with good physical tools and good shooting upside. That's what a lot of his draft status said. Well, after getting drafted by Cleveland and then landing in Utah, his role seemed less and less clear, to be honest. In his first 3 seasons in the NBA, Ochai Agbaji shot 42, 32, 74 splits. Not really efficient at all, and on top of that, his defense was questionable at best. This season, however, Ochai Agbaji has shown to be a very good contributor and potentially even a long-term piece for this Toronto Raptors team. The future in Toronto seems pretty good. Ochai Agbaji, in my opinion, should be a part of that. The Raptors aren't very good, so it's very difficult to measure like his plus-minus and his on-off numbers. Team's naturally just not great with or without him. But defensively, opponent offensive rating goes down about 2 points with Agbaji on the court. In terms of production as well, Agbaji went from averaging 5.8 points per game last season to about 10 this year. He's also added 3.7 rebounds and a steal per game. He's getting an average of about 2 more shots per game. However, just like Ty Jerome, his efficiency jump has definitely left me impressed. Agbaji last season had an effective field goal percentage at about 48%, which is good enough for the 39th percentile. Not very good at all. This season, Agbaji is shooting 59.8 effective field goal percentage, which is good enough for the 91st percentile. He went from statistically an inefficient shooter to a very efficient shooter in one offseason. That's what we like to see. It definitely helps when you become a 40% three-point shooter, as well as being able to sometimes attack people off the dribble. He did it at Kansas a lot, so I thought maybe he'd be able to do it in the NBA. It doesn't happen as often, but if you close out too hard on him, yeah, he can go downhill a little bit, as well as playing just solid defense. Being a solid net neutral to even a slightly positive defender is a good thing in the modern NBA, and for a guy like Ochai Agbaji, who in my opinion I saw as a good potential 3-and-D prospect, him finding that mold and becoming a 3-and-D prospect is what I like to see. It kind of reminds me of an Aaron Nesmith. Maybe not as good as Aaron Nesmith, but if you remember Nesmith with the Celtics his first few years, he was considered a really good shooter coming out of college, and then he struggled to make his shots, and then he became a really consistent contributor in Indiana just a few years after a trade. Well, Ochai Agbaji was in the same boat. Coming out, people thought he was a really good 3-and-D prospect coming out of Kansas. He lands in Utah, can't find his footing at all, gets traded to Toronto. Now he's having a really good year. Agbaji's increases in production may not be the sexiest thing you've ever seen, but in my opinion, he's gotten better at the perfect time. Again, averaging about 5 more points per game than last season. I'm not saying Ochai Agbaji would have never gotten a chance in the NBA. If you have length and some athleticism and potentially shooting upside, a team will always gamble on you. However, with Agbaji being a 4-year college player and already at 24 years old, his first 3 seasons struggling, that's not really going to get you many calls, man. No offense, but if you're a 4-year college guy and then you struggle your first few years in the NBA, that doesn't look great, because 4-year college guys are supposed to be the polished ones that come out looking better than the raw rookies that were one-and-dones or something of the sort, the 18, 19-year-olds. Most 4-year college guys just don't get a long tenured stay in the NBA. In my opinion, look at what's happening with Chris Duarte. Chris Duarte was an incredible college player who's now kind of just falling out of the NBA silently after an incredible rookie season. Ochai Agbaji's kind of had a reversal of that. While Duarte started off strong, Agbaji started off rough, and they've flipped spots since then. And like I said before, Toronto's definitely getting better as a team. They are not the best team in the league, obviously. However, with a core 3 of RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, and Scotty Barney, it definitely leaves room for a bunch of role players to have to step in and fill the gaps, and Ochai Agbaji can be one of those. 6'6", got some length, good 3-point shooter, can knock down a corner 3, and can sometimes attack the basket. I'd like to see his bag get a little bit deeper, but I really don't even think it needs to. 3-and-D pays in the modern NBA with some athleticism. 6'6", he's got good size, good length. So, going up 5 points per game, becoming a more efficient and just all-around better shooter and all-around better offensive player definitely earns you a salute. Number 4 on the list, I have Amir Coffey from the Clippers. Now in year 6 for Amir Coffey. By God, it's year 6 already for him. Either way, Coffey has never been a double-digit scorer in his career. This season, he's averaging 10.5 points per game on career-best shooting splits. Last season, Coffey averaged 6.6 points per game on 47, 38, 86 splits, which is definitely solid production. However, 10.5 points per game on 47, 41, 91 splits is a pretty sizable leap. Coffey's been given more of a green light this year to try and run that second unit for the Clippers. If you watch some games like against Boston, he had a big game. He's had a couple of high 20-point games where he's genuinely just impressed me. When Amir Coffey has the ball, if he's not taking a spot-up 3-pointer, he likes attacking the basket and hitting that little fadeaway. He likes the nail, he likes the high post. He can knock down shots from both of those spots at the mid-range. He's a pretty good mid-range shooter. On the year, Amir Coffey is 55 of 125 in the mid-range, in general. I mean, that's money. He's also averaging a career high 7.5 field goal attempts per game. That's a sizable leap. Since the All-Star break, Amir Coffey has definitely struggled more than he did pre-All-Star break, with his 3-point shooting being in the 20% range in the second half of the season post-All-Star break. That's just an absolutely insane drop, about 20 percent points. And right now, Clippers fans seem to really be mixed about Amir Coffey. Some love him, some hate him. It's fair. The team is slipping pretty badly, and if I'm being completely honest with you, it seems like the sky is falling with the Clippers. They did just have a big win against Detroit. However, I'm going to be honest, they still have looked very bad since the All-Star break. And it doesn't help Amir Coffey put up a -14 in a 4-point loss to the Lakers and a -10 in a 2-point loss. That definitely hurts if you're not able to be a contributor off the bench. However, in my opinion, the sentiment of Amir Coffey's season should definitely not be this 7-game post-All-Star sample. He's had a great year, and I still think he has time to turn it around. However, post-All-Star break, I can agree with you, he's definitely been a rough watch. However, in my opinion, his role's also been reduced. Kawhi's back to playing basically full-time again. He's crossed the 20-game mark. He's back to being in the starting lineup, so Coffee gets less minutes there. And then they added Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's also helped run that second unit a little bit more, take the ball out of Amir Coffey's hands a little bit. I'm not saying it's Bogdan Bogdanovic's fault. Amir Coffey is dropping 20% on the three-point shooting. He still has to make those shots. However, it definitely doesn't help. There's less opportunities with a Bogdan Bogdanovic there, as well as, like I said, Kawhi Leonard coming back, and the team overall just getting more shallow talent-wise. I think Coffey may have actually been helped more by the fact that they had a Kevin Porter Jr. As much as I may dislike Kevin Porter Jr.'s play at times, he is a very good facilitator off the bench. He can pass the ball relatively well, and he can score when he gets in that mode. But for Amir Coffey, now there's really no playmaker on the second unit. Chris Dunn has been very bad recently for the Clippers. This has become a Clippers rant in this video. I don't want it to be like that. So Clippers fans, I'm sorry that the sky is currently falling on your head. Hopefully they can rack off a few more wins after that big Pistons win. I don't know if James Harden's going to give you 50, but maybe you can keep trying to rely on James Harden 50-point games. It really doesn't bother me. It's not Amir's fault that the sky's fallen, though, in my opinion. Amir Coffey's had a pretty good season for a guy who I believe was undrafted in year 6, putting up career highs in just about every statistical category. He's having a great year. Salute. The last player in today's video, the fifth and final player, is a player who's actually been very good for a few years now, but has gotten progressively better throughout his career. It's Malik Monk. One of my favorite players in the league that I very seldom get a chance to really talk about is Malik Monk. I think Monk is an incredible player. He has very fun scoring games. He can get buckets when he wants to. Very athletic, defends pretty well, and has a little bit of playmaking and basketball IQ in there. He's definitely become a way better playmaker. We'll discuss that more. The athleticism part is what I loved about Malik Monk. However, he was an explosive scorer at Kentucky, who I just enjoyed watching as a Kentucky basketball fan. Monk last season put up a stat line of 15.5 points with 5 assists and 3 rebounds, and less than a steal per game. This season, Malik Monk's putting up 17.6 points per game, 6 assists, and 3.5 rebounds with a steal per game. All those numbers I just listed right there for this season are career highs for Malik Monk. Monk's three-point percentage and three-point efficiency in general has absolutely plummeted. I'm going to be honest with you. Monk has regressed to about a 32.5% three-point shooter, albeit he is taking a career high almost 7 attempts per game. He's taking a career high, but also shooting a career low. I don't know how to feel about that. It's not a career low. Just checked. My bad. Not a career low from 3, but it's still pretty bad. 32.5% ain't great. Monk this year, however, though, has made his money in the mid-range. He's shooting a blistering 49% this season from the mid-range, which puts him in the 89th percentile. Monk is a much-needed change of pace for this Kings team as a whole. The offensive rating of the Kings jumps up a whole 4 points with Malik Monk on the floor, and I think it's because he's a better facilitator than their backup or really any other guard they have. Points per 100 possessions also goes up about 5.5 with Malik Monk on the floor. He's shown to be a complete difference maker in this Kings offense when he's there. When they don't have him, like against the Nuggets last night, sometimes they just look too slow, and they struggle to score in the half court at times, and sometimes they just need a playmaker. I like DeMar DeRozan and I love Zach LaVine, but neither one of them's really a playmaker. I don't expect DeMar or Zach to really give me 10 assists. Malik Monk, however, is averaging over 6 a game. He can get you 10. The Kings aren't sacrificing much on defense with Monk in the game, as the opposing points per 100 possessions is in the 56th percentile. That slots him above league average. I wouldn't necessarily call Malik Monk an above average defender, but I would call him about league average, which is fine. Being a net neutral is a positive in today's NBA. You just can't afford to be a negative defender. But the most fun part to me is his uptick in assists. It's been very nice to see. His turnover percentage is better than the last 2 seasons, and he's also averaging more assists than the last 2 seasons. He has the ball in his hands more than the last 2 seasons. He can really do that. He can pass, man. Malik Monk can really pass now. He's good at running pick and roll with Sabonis. He can find open shooters. He's a very good passer. A player who can score in multiple ways while being able to get you 10 assists some nights and play solid enough defense. That sounds like a plus to great player to me. Kings season's been a weird one. Definitely one of the more fun teams to watch in the NBA, in my opinion, right now. If you haven't watched the Kings game in a while, tap in. LaVine, DeRozan, Sabonis. It's a weird group, but it's kind of fun to watch. And Malik Monk, of course, is a big reason for that. Salute. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to catch you game. See you guys in the next one.